So last time we have a discussion about the introduction of economics, about the definition of scarcity, which is more focused on when you say scarcity, insufficiency or limited resources in order to satisfy the limited needs and wants of the consumers or population. So we also discussed about the differentiation of microeconomics and macroeconomics, and also the economic system. So this time we will have a topic about the supply and demand. So the basic of supply and demand. So I know you are familiar also of the supply and demand, and let's have a illustration of a supply and demand. So here, there is a demand schedule and the supply schedule. So this is an example of the supply and demand of wheat. So here, um, this is the supply, and the red is the the blue is the demand. Okay, a supply, I think. Yes, the blue one, the blue line is the supply, and the red one is the demand. So if you see, so here at the price of 350, there's a quantity of 320. So this is the point of the demand. And then at the price of 3.7, the quantity that needed the demand for the demand, the quantity needed for the demand is with the price of 370, there's a need of 300 quantity. So while in the supply schedule, if you see at the price of 350, so the supply is only 40. And then at the price of 3.70 so the quantity is 100. So there is an so the blue one again is the demand, the supply, and the red one is the demand. So if you notice, even in the demand and supply schedule, so as the price of the product is increases on the demand schedule, the quantity is decreases. As the price increases, the quantity for the demand is decreases. And for the supply schedule, if you see, as the price increases, the demand also increases. So we will discuss in the next slides about the supply and demand. So you have a link or hint also based on the demand schedule and the supply schedule. So there is an opposite of the impact of the quantity in terms of the prices between the demand schedule and the supply schedule. Again, observe again the demand schedule. As the price increases from 350 to 530, the demand, the quantity demanded based on the demand schedule is from the 320, it decreases until it became 40 at the price of 530. And on the supply schedule, from the price which is 350 na mababa siya, and then tumaas siya by $5.10, the quantity the quantity for supply also increases from 40 naging 320. Okay? So please analyze based on the demand schedule. So what are the three tasks that the price system perform for our economy? So we have the rationing of goods and services, wherein when you say rationing, limiting of goods and services that are high demand and short supply. So also another task uh, that the price system perform for our economy is the determination of wages. Okay, so it depends on the income of the household. And then we have the allocation of limited resources. So these are the three tasks that the price system perform in our economy. The rationing of goods and services in terms of the high demand and short supply, and the determination of the wages or income of the consumer or household, and next, the allocation or distribution of limited resources. So for the law of supply and demand, so there is a differentiation between demand and supply. When we say demand, it is the willingness to buy goods or services at all prices. So when we say the law of demand, if nothing else changes, the quantity demand of a goods or service is greater at a lower price than higher. So, di ba? If you see on the demand schedule that I presented kanina, um, the lower the price, the higher the demand, right? So it is based on the law of demand. And then for the supply means the quantity of the goods or service a firm is willing to produce at all prices. So it is on the part of the supplier, the demand is on the part of the consumer or buyer. So supply is the quantity of production in which the firm or supplier can produce at all prices. So when we say the law of supply here, if nothing else changes, firms are willing to supply a greater quantity of good or service at a higher price than lower price. So if you recall the schedule for the supply or for the supply, so the prices from 350, the quantity is lesser. Then if you notice, at a higher price, the supplier or on the long supply, the supplier is willing to produce by 320 units at the price of 5.1 dollars. Okay? Medyo nag-hang. Okay, so again, in the law of supply, the firm are willing to supply a greater quantity of goods or service at a higher price than the lower price, because they are also aiming for a high profit. Therefore, they want that the prices is increases. However, we will have a scenario wherein there is a within the supply and the demand later on. Okay, so here this is an example of demand curve for Xbox. This is a sample yung Xbox 360. So this is an example yung parang game in ano to. So here this is the demand curve. So if you notice, in the law of demand, as the price increases, the demand is decreases. Again, in the law of demand, as the price increases, the demand is decreases. Diba? If you are a consumer or a buyer, so when the price of a certain product is increasing, diba, you will not buy it, or it depends on your budget, or it depends on your needs. But then most of the consumer will not buy a certain product, especially if it goes in, or if the price is increasing. So that's why in the law of demand, as the price increases, the demand is decreases. Okay. So this is in the law of demand. When the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down. And when the price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. Diba? Even as we are a consumer, when the prices goes up, we will not easily purchase the product. But when there is markdown, or when the price drops, so we really avail of that opportunity to purchase the product. So that's the law of demand. Okay, so there are movement along the curve versus shift in the demand curve. So there is movement from the original demand to the new demand. So there are reasons why there is shifting on the demand curve. So here there are different factors that will cause a shift in demand, or there's an factors of the decrease or increase of the demand. So first, the price of goods or service. So when the price of the product is increasing, diba, you will not purchase the product except if really need or required to purchase. And also, number two, the income of the buyer. So it depends on the buyer income. So especially now that it is pandemic, many is unemployed. So they do not have source of income, or their income is limited. So it also affects the shifting of the demand in terms of the prices of goods or services. Also, we have prices of related goods and services. It's because of the substitution. There are many products that um, there is a substitution in a certain product. So that's why there is also shifting on the demands. Instead of buying pork, they will buy chicken, or they will both chicken. So there is shifting on the demand of example of pork because of the prices, and also the taste of consumers. So diba, sometimes there are consumer behavior, the behavior of the consumer wherein when they if that product is new to them, they will taste it, and after a while they will um, return to that product, and then later on nakakaumay din, di ba? So there is changes on the shift, or there is shifting on the demand curve also. Also, another is the expectation that there's an expectation that the price of a product will increase. So there is an effect on the demand curve. So either it will decrease or increase. So especially if there are expectation that the price of last time there is increases in the prices of face shield or face mask. So what you expect is that you will purchase volume of face mask to to uh, for your personal consumption. So what will the effect? There's an effect on the shifting of the demand of face mask because of the behavior of the consumer, which is yung ano Parang may panic buying because of that. Okay, so this is the that we discussed. And then here, this is an example of price of other goods. So this is the prices of pork now, and this is the price of chicken meat. So if you see, there is a big difference between the price of pork meat to chicken meat. So instead of buying pork, we prefer to purchase or we buy chicken meat. Okay, so there is substitution in terms of the pricing. So there is a that's the other reason why there is a shifting of the demand. Next, let's go to the supply curve. So here in the supply curve, if you notice on the graph, when the price of the product is increasing, the supply also increasing. There's a scenario wherein when as a supplier, di ba, you prefer na mataas yung prices. So as you see the trend of the prices, the pricing of your product na nag-i-increase yung price, you tend to produce more in order to supply the demand of the product and also um, to get the opportunity of the increase in pricing. And also, there are other reasons why is it the supply is also increasing. So other reason also because when we compare the demand and supply, as the price is increasing, the demand will in decreasing. So what will happen to the supplier is they will produce more, pero yung supply nila is nag-i-increase because konti lang yung bumibili ng kanilang product. So that's why. So there are why is it na yung once the price of a product is increasing, the supply is also increasing. So here is the in the law of supply again. When the price goes up, the supply goes up. And when the price goes down, the supply goes down. So it means same yung effect ng supply sa price. And then yung demand naman sa price is opposite. Diba? If konti lang yung bumibili ng product na yon, because of the increase in prices, the supply of the product also nag-i-increase. Pero if madami yung demand ng product, because bumaba yung price, so nag-decrease din yung supply. And then, if you are the supplier, you see na mababa yung presyo, so hindi ka magpo-produce ng madami because possibility na lulugi ka din. Or it will result to net loss. So this is the movement along versus shift of a supply curve. So this is the original supply na line, and there is shifting on the supply. So this is the new supply na line. So there are factors that will cause a shift in supply, or there's a shifting of the supply curve, either decrease or increase. So first we have the productivity. So there is a shifting of the supply because of the productivity based on the improvement in machine and production processes of goods and service. Also, we have the inputs. There's a changes in the price of inputs, yung mga raw materials that required to produce the goods or service. And we have government actions, which includes the subsidies of the government, the taxes that implemented by them, and also the rules and regulation that affects the business. And we have the technology. So changes in the supply is based on the technology that we're in. There's an improvement on the machines in production process of the goods and service. And also, another factor that caused the shifting is the output. So based on the price changes in other products produced by the firm. So that's why example yung pork meat and chicken meat. So that's the output wherein there's changes in other products. So there is shifting on the supply. And we have the expectations, what is the possible outlook of a supplier of the future prices and profits. Okay. Now, since the product will increase, so there is an expectation on the part of the supplier or firm. And also, and the last is the size of the industry, or it's based on the number of firms in the industry. So if your firms, you have many branches, so there's a need also na, example, there are certain branches na need ng maraming supply. So there is also effect on the demand of the supply. So there is a shifting also on the supply curve. So, however, there are exceptions of the law of supply. So, example here, the closure of the business. So, in exception to sa law of supply. Then also we have the agricultural products, the monopoly. Okay, then we have the competition, the perishable goods, the rare goods, and out of fashion goods. So it is exempted in the law of supply wherein when the price of the product is increases, the supply also increases. So exception to the rule yung itong mga na-mention. Okay, so in the closure of business, so when the business is on the verge of closure, the seller may sell the goods even at low price. So exempted siya sa law of supply. So since ubusin niya dapat yung ano niya is para ano naman yung benta niya, so it's better na yung seller will sell the goods na even in a low price. So instead na even yung product is nag-increase na at a high price, so because ubusin niya lahat ng products niya because of the closure on his business, so ibebenta niya at a low price. So, exempted siya sa rule ng supply. So the purpose of this sa closure business is to clear the stock. That's why na yung mga goods niya is nag-set siya at a lower price. Another is the agricultural product. So our agricultural products now is there's an increasing part on the agricultural product. So we know that the land is limited resources and thus a resource, and thus the agricultural produce can also not be increased beyond a certain level. So even if the price increases, the supply cannot increase. So ito yung nangyayari sa mga example, yung mga vegetables or mga plants, agricultural products natin na because of the calamities na nangyayari. So there is a changes na kahit yung konti yung supply, they cannot control to increase the agricultural products. So that's why na kahit mag-increase yung prices, that supply cannot increase. They cannot increase the price. And next we have the monopoly. So monopoly, take note here, is there is only a single seller of commodity. Thus, he is the price maker and has control over the prices. So it is not also applicable to the law of supply because since you are only a single seller on the commodity, you have the option to increase the prices. or you have an opportunity to increase the price. So since you don't have, if you have a monopolistic type of business, so you are a single seller, so it gives you an opportunity to increase or to control the prices. So here the law of supply may not apply also. And then next we have the competition. So when there is a cutthroat competition in the market, the seller may sell more quantity of goods even at low price. So this is a situation where the law of supply will not apply also in the competition, because since there are many competitors that are competing in a certain market, so if there are many will decrease their prices, it affects also it gives also impact to other competitors or sellers, that they will also decrease their prices, cutthroat. So that's why if the competition is not applicable in the law of supply. Then we also have perishable goods. So it is not also applicable here, because the seller is willing to sell more goods that are perishable in nature, even at low price, because if they remain unsold, they will yield only loss. Okay, yung mga perishable goods. So example here, yung mga lapit na yung Valentine's Day. So there are many flowers na binibenta. So in that, before or during the Valentine's Day, so the price of the product of the flowers is increased. Pero pag tapos na yung Valentine's Day, if you notice, mababa na yung presyo. So it is not apply yung perishable goods, because they need to sell all the flowers or all their products, para hindi sila masyadong yield or mag-gain ng or maka-earn ng loss. Okay? So it's better na ibenta na lang with a lower price than wala na silang makukuhang income. Especially kung tapos na yung occasion. And then we have the rare goods. So the goods that are rare, such as artistic or precious goods that have a limited supply. So the supply of these goods cannot be increased according to their demand or rising prices. Okay, so this is an example of the graph for the supply and demand, wherein the demand and supply meet. It is called, there is an it's called equilibrium. When the supply and demand meet in a certain price, there is an equilibrium in terms of the price and the quantity. So this is an example of equilibrium. So here, equilibrium is the condition that exists when the quantity supplied and the quantity demanded are equal. Again, the condition that exists when the quantity supplied and quantity demanded are equal. So at equilibrium, there is no tendency for price to change. Okay? So there can be a shortage or excess demand and surplus or excess supply. So again, shortage or excess demand. So sobra yung demand, shortage yung supply. So the condition is that exists when the quantity demanded exceed quantity supplied at the current price. So there is also possibility on that, where in a certain price na agreed price or current price, there is an effect on the shortage of the supply because of the excess of the demand of consumer in a certain product. And then we have the surplus or excess supply. It is when the condition that exists when the quantity supplied exceeds quantity demanded at the current price. So therefore, there is a surplus of supply here. So this is an example of the graph in the supply and demand, wherein there is a market equilibrium, wherein the demand and supply met. So at the price of $350, in a quantity of 60 units. So wherein the demand and the supply agreed. Okay? So this is equilibrium na walang shortage, walang surplus of supply. So wherein at the 350, the supplier can provide the demand of the consumer at the price of 350. They will produce a 60 units of quantity to the consumer or buyer. So that's the purpose of equilibrium. Na walang sobra, walang kulang. So at the price of 350 na maibigay nila sa demand or sa buyer, they need to produce 60 units. Okay? So equal lang yung supply na ma-produce nila para sa need ng demand. Okay, so there is a possibility of the excess of the demand or shortage because it is a condition that exists when the quantity demand, okay, it exceeds quantity supplied at the current price. So here, when the quantity, so that's if this happened, so when the quantity demanded exceed quantity supplied, the price tend to rise until the equilibrium restored. So there is an excess demand or shortage of the supply. So what will happen to this if there is an excess demand and shortage of supply? There is the supplier or the company will increase the prices. They will increase the prices so that it will go back to the equilibrium, di ba? Kasi ano yun madami yung demand kasi mababa yung price. So maraming bumibili. So there's a shortage on the side of the supply. So para bumalik siya sa equilibrium point, they will tend to increase the prices para yung supply is hindi na siya para yung supply magno-normalize na. Para hindi na siya magka-shortage. Okay? And then for the excess of the supply or surplus is a condition that exists when the quantity supplied exceeds quantity demanded at the current price. So there's an excess of supply or surplus of supply. So here, what they will do is that when the quantity supplied exceeds quantity demanded, the price tends to fall until the equilibrium restored. So they will decrease the prices. They will tend to decrease the prices until it will go back to the equilibrium. So it's because nagmahal yung price ng product. So marami yung hindi bibili. So bababa yung nag-decrease yung demand. So because wala nang bibili, nag-excess yung supply. So para i-reduce yung excess ng supply or it will go back to the equilibrium, they will tend to lower the price para mag-increase yung demand or dumami yung bibili or purchase na consumer or buyer. Okay. So the changes in there's a changes in the equilibrium also as same with the demand and supply. Okay, so here if there's an increase in demand, it leads to higher equilibrium price. Diba? And higher equilibrium quantity. Okay, so this is a change. There's a changes in the equilibrium. Again, if madami yung demand ng product, it will increase also the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. That's why there is shifting or changes in the equilibrium. And then also with the same with the supply. If there's an increase in the supply, it leads to lower equilibrium price and higher equilibrium quantity. So tataas yung price because dumami yung supply, tumaas yung price, and sa equilibrium, and the same time, increase also the quantity. And same, if there's a decrease in the demand, leads to a lower price and lower quantity exchange. And for the supply, if there's changes in equilibrium, it will result to decrease in supply. The decrease in supply leads to a higher price and lower quantity exchange. So again, so for the summary of our discussion, so this is a simple ano lang, na again, in the law of demand, when the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down. And when the price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. Okay, so if in a simple understanding lang natin, so if we are the consumer or if we are the buyer, when the price goes up, 'di ba, hindi tayo bibili. So we are part of the demand na magdi-decrease 'yon. But when the price goes down, so it uh, it gives us an opportunity to purchase or to buy the product. That's why we are part of the demand. So there's a possibility that the quantity demanded also goes up. And then for the law of supply, again, it is on the side of the supplier or on the side of the business or firm or seller. So when the price goes up, the supply goes up also, because there's an supplier business behavior also, or thinking that since the price goes up, we will produce more, so that we will it gives an opportunity na mag-increase yung profit ng business. So that's why they increase also the supply. However, if we connect to the demand, so if mag-increase yung price, di ba, bababa yung demand. So what will happen to the supply? Bababa din yung, i-increase yung supply kasi marami yung hindi bibili. So that's the impact now. And then on the side of the supplier naman, because they avail or they grab the opportunity that the price goes up, they will produce more also. That's why the supply goes up also or nag-increase. And when the price goes down, so the supplier will not produce more because mababa yung price. So there's a possibility that if they're going to sell that, mababa din yung profit nila. And on the side of the demand naman, since bumaba yung price, there's an increase in the demand. So what will happen to the supply of the seller? Bababa din because marami yung bibili ng product nila. So example yung mga bigas. So yung price ng bigas. So if marami yung bumibili ng bigas on the part of the retailer, so yung price naman is if madami yung ma-increase yung demand ng consumption ng supply ng rice, yung price sa retailer side is tataas din. And then when the supply of the product, however, it will not applicable pala yung law of supply sa agricultural products. So it is not applicable pala. Okay, so again, this is the law of supply. And then for the exception of the law of supply, again, so here, the closure of the business, the agricultural products, the monopoly, competition, perishable goods, rare goods, and out-of-fashion goods, these are the exception of the law of supply. So you cannot apply the law of supply if these are the cases. And also we already discussed the equilibrium prices in the supply and demand diagram or graph. So if you see, equilibrium is a state of equality or balance. So there's a balance between the market demand and supply. So wherein the demand and supply met, there is an equilibrium. So there is a certain price, equilibrium price, that will equal to the quantity supplied. Equilibrium, quantity equilibrium. Okay? So there is no excess demand or supply. So it's good to identify the equilibrium price and the quantity so that hindi siya, well, there's no excess on the demand and supply. Okay, so this is the graph about the surplus of supply and the surplus of the demand. So again, there is a surplus of the supply when there is a ano yun, when the price of the product is increases, yes. So here, when the price is increases, when the new price is increases than the original price. So if there is a surplus of the demand, so they need to reduce the price para babalik siya sa equilibrium. And then again, if in the surplus of the demand naman, wherein the price decreases the original price. So they need to increase the price in order to go back to its equilibrium. Okay, so that's our last topic for week 2. So is there any question?